Hello, my name is Daniel. I grew up in a small town called Santa Aurora. It was big enough to have a little bit of everything, but still too small to keep secrets for long. My life there was peaceful, surrounded by friends, school parties on the weekends, and that typical small town atmosphere where everyone seems to know each other. It was in this setting that I met Marcelo. He was the father of Henrique, one of my best friends from school. Henrique lived in a gated community, in a spacious house with a balcony overlooking an immaculate garden. At first glance, the house conveyed peace, but there was something about Marcelo that intrigued me from the start. He was 51 years old, but looked much younger. Always well-dressed, he had a restrained, discreet smile and a deep gaze, like someone who had lived more than he showed. Every gesture he made exuded confidence. At first, I went to Henrique's house just for the friendship, but over time I realized that I also wanted to be there for the chance to exchange glances with Marcelo. My admiration for him grew subtly. I found myself listening to his conversations, paying attention to the way he talked about life, always so different from the younger men I knew. This admiration gradually turned into something I didn't quite know how to name. One of my most vivid memories happened one afternoon in November, shortly before the end of the school year. It had been raining since early morning, a light rain that made the air muggy, typical of that time of year. I was at Henrique's house, but when he decided to go out with the rest of the group to the mall, I made up an excuse to stay. I said I was tired, that I needed some time alone. The truth was that I knew Marcelo would be home that afternoon. We sat on the porch, watching the rain run down the roof. We talked about simple things, my plans for college, trips I would like to take. Marcelo told me about an old trip he had taken with his family to the southern mountains. He described the cold wind, the winding roads, the smell of wet earth. I lost myself in his words, not so much for what he was saying, but for the way he spoke, laden with memories and feelings. Suddenly, silence took over. Marcelo looked at me differently, and my stomach turned. I knew what he was thinking because it was the same as what I was thinking. My heart was beating so fast that I thought he could hear it. Then, almost without meaning to, he put his hand on my knee. The touch was brief, almost casual, but it burned my skin. It was at that moment that I realized a line was about to be crossed. And it was. In that silence, lulled only by the sound of the rain, we kissed. A slow, hesitant kiss, but full of restrained desire. Soon after, Marcelo pulled me into the house. Everything happened naturally, intensely, and overwhelmingly, leading me to sensations I had never experienced before. From that day on, we began to meet frequently, always at his house, at times when his wife, Claudia, was away. Henrique, my friend, never suspected anything no one did, but each meeting was risky. I would arrive on my motorcycle, park far from the condominium, and enter through the back door. Marcelo would wait for me in his office, a room isolated from the rest of the house where the outside world simply ceased to exist. We would spend hours in that space, sometimes just talking, sometimes touching each other hurriedly, other times calmly and intimately, as if we had all the time in the world. I felt safe there, even though I knew the risk. Over time, the tension increased. Claudia began to notice changes. Marcelo became distant, making excuses for his absences. I knew it was only a matter of time before everything was discovered. And it was. One day, after one of our afternoons together, he called me. His voice was tense. He said that Claudia had found a message from me and was suspicious. He asked us to stop. I knew that moment would come, but I wasn't ready to hear it. Our last meeting was silent. Marcelo seemed tired, weighed down by the burden of lies. We stayed in the office, not knowing what to say. When I left, I realized that I would never return to that house the same way again. Getting back to my routine was difficult. Henrique remained my friend, oblivious to everything. But every time I mentioned his father, I felt a knot in my stomach. Sometimes I would see Marcelo from afar, in the garden or in the hallway, and I would look away. Perhaps he also avoided looking at me, trying to erase what we had experienced. Months passed. I tried to move on. I had other relationships, but nothing was the same. The memory of Marcelo accompanied me in silence. There was guilt, yes, but there was also something else. A feeling that those moments, however wrong they were, had marked me irreversibly. One day, we ran into each other by chance in the city center. I was with friends, he was leaving a cafe alone. Our eyes met for a second. He waved discreetly. We didn't need to say anything. It was clear that this would remain only in our memories. Shortly after, I moved to another city to study. The distance helped me process it and move on, but the memories stayed with me. Years later, when I returned to Santa Aurora to visit my family, I heard from acquaintances that Marcelo and Claudia had separated. They said the divorce had been amicable, but didn't go into details. The news hit me in a strange way, a mixture of shock, curiosity, and something I didn't want to admit to myself, hope. It wasn't long before my cell phone vibrated with an unexpected message. It was from him. "Hi, it's me, Marcelo. I know it's been a long time, but I can't deny that I still think about you. I never forgot you." I was paralyzed staring at those words. Memories came flooding back. My heart raced just like it did on that rainy November afternoon. I replied, hesitantly, but unable to help myself, "I never forgot you either." The next day, we met at a quiet cafe in town. When he walked in, my whole body reacted. Time had passed, but his presence still had the same effect on me. We talked for hours, as if the intervening years had been just a pause. He told me about his divorce, about his loneliness in recent times, and especially about how I had never left his thoughts. I tried to be rational, but when our eyes met again, I realized it would be impossible to resist. We left together, walking aimlessly, until we stopped in front of his car. There was silence, the kind that carries everything that doesn't need to be said. Then he held my hand, squeezed it firmly, and confessed, "I don't want to miss the chance to really live this now." And so, as if fate had been waiting for this moment, we saw each other again. No longer in secret, no longer under the weight of the forbidden, but with the intensity of those who already knew exactly what they wanted. Each encounter felt like a resumption of everything that had been left unfinished, only now more mature, more free, more real. Over time, Marcelo and I stopped hiding. It was no longer the same risky game of youth. Now we met freely, went out to dinner, walked together through the main square of Santa Aurora, and little by little we let go of our fear of what others might think. But there was one delicate point: Henrique, my friend of so many years, his son, and the last person I wanted to hurt. Every time we were together, deep down I knew that sooner or later, the truth would come out. And it did. It was on a Saturday night. We were at Marcelo's house, chatting in the living room after a simple dinner, when Henrique walked in unannounced. He had the house key, as always, and we weren't expecting a visit. When he opened the door, he found us side by side, our hands still too close together to hide. The silence that filled the room was suffocating. My whole body froze. Marcelo tried to get up, but Henrique raised his hand, asking him to stay seated. His gaze shifted between us, full of surprise, but not anger. "So that's it?" he asked, his voice firm but not aggressive. I couldn't answer. Marcelo took a deep breath, looked at his son, and said calmly, "Yes, Henrique, I won't deny it. It's real. I love him." My heart raced. I didn't know if I was about to witness an irreparable breakup or a miracle. Henrique was silent for a few seconds that seemed like an eternity. Then he sighed, sat down on the couch facing us, and said, "Look, I'm not going to say it's not strange. You know it is. But I had already noticed something back when I was younger. I always suspected. And to be honest, I just wish you had been honest with me before." He ran his hand through his hair, visibly nervous but not angry. Then he looked straight at me and added, "You've been my friend for years. I know you. I trust you. And if you're the one by my father's side, I have no reason not to accept it." The tears I had been holding back fell without me being able to stop them. Marcelo was also moved, and at that moment I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. Henrique accepted us. It wasn't easy, it wasn't immediate, but it was sincere. He made it clear that he needed time. But the most important thing had already been said. He didn't reject us. From then on, something changed. The secret that had been a shadow for years became a bond, a new form of family that began to take shape, unexpected and unlikely, but real. Time passed faster than I could have imagined. After so many changes, so many conversations, and so many nights of uncertainty, today I look around and can hardly believe where we have arrived. 2 years ago, Marcelo and I left Santa Aurora behind and moved to the capital. The big city welcomed us with noise, lights, and a rhythm very different from the one we grew up with. At first, it was scary. Chaotic traffic, huge buildings, people rushing by without even looking to the side. But little by little, we learned to turn that setting into a home. We found an apartment on the 10th floor of a modern building, with a balcony overlooking the entire city. At night, the lights look like an endless sea, and we often stand there, side by side, in silence, just watching the movement below. It's as if the world can spin at will, because what really matters is within those walls. We have been living together officially for 2 years. 2 years of shared routines, of coffee brewed early in the morning, of laughter in the kitchen, of silly fights over who forgot the wet towel on the bed, but also of intense reconciliations. And if there is one thing that surprises me every day, it is realizing that even after all this time, our love seems stronger now than it did in the beginning. Marcelo is still the man who won me over with his gaze, but today he's also my partner in everything, paying the bills, going to the market, taking short weekend trips. The passion that began in secret, marked by the fear of being discovered, now flourishes in the light of day without barriers, without excuses. Sometimes, I still find myself remembering the first time we kissed, on that balcony smelling of rain. But now, when I close my eyes, I see a whole future ahead of us. A future that we are building together, step by step, without regrets. And if before I wondered if it was worth facing everything we faced today, I am sure it was worth every risk, every silence, every tear. Because what we have now is more than love, it is a shared life. Today, looking back, I see how our journey was made up of risks, discoveries, and choices that completely changed the course of my life. What began in silence, hidden away, became something strong enough to withstand time, difficulties, and even the gaze of others. 2 years of living together, and I still feel that butterflies in my stomach every time Marcelo holds my hand. We are more in love now than we were in the beginning. And that is proof that true love not only endures, but grows when it is lived with courage. If this story touched you, if you like this kind of narrative that mixes emotion, passion, and real life, subscribe to the channel. That way, you can follow all the upcoming stories and continue to live these experiences with me.